I was like a beautiful painting, hung on a wall that no one bothered to look at anymore. On the surface, life followed its rehearsed script. Coffee on the table, an automatic goodnight, conversations that never strayed beyond bills. But inside, there was only silence. Not the light, easy silence of two people who understand each other with a glance, but the kind that weighs you down, that suffocates, that makes the sound of your own breathing seem too loud. It had been so long since I'd remembered what it felt to feel an ignited touch, not just on my body, but in a look, in a word that glowed like a burning ember. I had become part of the furniture, useful, predictable, forgotten. And slowly, I began to disappear from myself. But then he appeared, not with flowers, not with rehearsed lines. He was just there, present, attentive. He listened to my voice as if it had value, responded to my ideas with genuine interest. And for an invisible woman, that is the most dangerous kind of invitation. I started to notice myself again, to see myself through an unfamiliar gaze, his. Why did he look at me like that? And why did it make me feel so alive? I told no one, but inside me, something began to stir. An old, almost forgotten desire, now impossible to control. I knew its name, but I didn't dare say it out loud. At first, it was just work. Weekly meetings, targets, presentations. He was always there, on the other side of the screen, with that attentive gaze. Not the mechanical attention of someone just waiting for their turn to speak. It was different. He heard me, and for me, that was already almost too intimate. It's hard to explain. When you spend too long being ignored, even a simple "good morning," said with interest, feels dangerous. And he didn't just listen. He remembered what I said. He'd bring it up later, ask questions, laugh with me. Sometimes he would just be quiet, watching me as I spoke, as if my very presence was something pleasant to observe. That started to get to me. I began to fix my hair before our video calls. Nothing dramatic, just a little effort I hadn't bothered with before. I chose blouses that accentuated my curves, even while sitting down. A soft lipstick, a touch of shimmer in my eyes, details no one else would notice. But he noticed. "That color suits you," he said once casually. I smiled, but inside, I felt something awaken. I didn't know if it was desire, longing, or just loneliness. But it wasn't just about him. It was about what he awoke in me, the way I saw myself when I was in his presence, desirable, alive, whole. And so I found myself asking a silent question just before each meeting. Asterisk. I wonder if he looks forward to this moment as much as I do. It started with innocent messages. "You explained that very well today." Or, "I admire your composure in meetings." But soon, the tone began to shift. The sentences grew slower, more calculated, dangerously intimate. "You looked beautiful today. I imagined what it would be like to hear your voice up close." I would read them with a racing heart and reply with laughing emojis, trying to keep things light. But my hands trembled. There was more in the subtext than I was willing to admit. And deep down, he knew. He knew he was opening doors I was pretending to keep locked. The messages became disguised confessions. He talked about imagining my scent, the way I crossed my arms. He said he thought of me at the most random moments of his day. And me? I smiled at my phone like a teenager, pretending it was nothing, when inside, it was already everything. Then one day, he crossed the line. He wrote what he would do to me if we were alone. Not with vulgarity, but with slow, almost poetic detail. A kind of dance between wanting and not being able to have. And the most terrifying part was what happened to me. My body answered before my mind could. Chills, a flush of heat, my imagination running wild in the darkness of my room. I started sleeping with my phone under my pillow, as if waiting for a signal. A new sentence, a new dare. Because deep down, I was no longer talking to him. I was talking to my own desire. The email about the company event arrived like any other. A generic subject line, a tired agenda. But one detail at the end, pulled the rug out from under me. The city. The same one he would be in. The same one where I would be staying for 2 days, caught between meetings and hotel nights. When he messaged me to confirm his attendance, I felt a strange shiver. It wasn't cold, it was a warning. Such and such hotel, 2 blocks from the center. I arrive Thursday. I replied with a laughing emoji, as if I didn't care. But the truth? My throat was dry. I feigned nonchalance. Well, look at that. Maybe we'll run into each other. But what I really wanted was for him not to ask. For him to just show up at my door as if he already knew the way. The idea of him being so close, sleeping just a few feet away, turned me inside out. I imagined the hotel corridors, the silent elevators, the walls too thin for so many secrets. I tried to rationalize. There was still time to back out, to act as if it were all a coincidence. But it wasn't. I knew it. He knew it. And behind every message we exchanged that week, there was a pulsing subtext. Asterisk. Are we really ready for this? Deep down, I already knew the answer. I just didn't want to be the first one to say it. I preferred that he would come, that he would look at me, that he would understand, without me having to ask. When the receptionist handed me the room key, it felt heavier than it should have. It was just a piece of plastic, but it held the power to open more than just a door. I knew that. My heart knew it too. I went up slowly. The corridors were empty, and each step sounded too loud on the muffled carpet. When I entered the room, the first thing I did was turn the key and hear the click of the lock. A small sound, but it sealed what was to come. The second thing was to look at myself in the mirror, to really look. And the woman staring back at me was no longer just the tired wife. There was still beauty in her features. There was still something lit in her eyes. Hidden, but alive. A woman who still wanted to be desired, even if the world told her otherwise. I took off my dress slowly, as if each descending strap was a memory being left behind. I stood in just a towel, feeling the damp fabric on my warm skin. The sound of the shower filled the silence, a constant, almost hypnotic hum, an invitation I couldn't resist. I stepped into the shower without looking back, not out of courage, but because looking back would mean thinking too much, and I had done that for far too long. There, with the water streaming down my skin, there was only room for one question. If he comes, will I be able to resist? There was no knock on the door, no warning, just the discreet sound of the lock turning. And yet, I knew, before I saw him, before a single word was spoken, I knew it was him. The very air in the room seemed to change, as if it now held another's breath besides my own. I stood frozen in the shower, the water cascading down my back, the glass door fogged in front of me, my heart hammered against my ribs, but my feet didn't move. And then, through the steam, I felt his gaze cut through everything. It wasn't a curious gaze. It was a gaze that already knew my body before he had even touched it. And yet, it was the silence that struck me most. There were no rehearsed lines, no obvious questions, just a dense pause filled with everything that couldn't be said in words. He walked into the bathroom as if he knew exactly what he was doing. And when he slid the shower door open, there was no rush, no rough gesture, only the certainty of someone who is finally standing before what they have desired for so long. His hands came slowly. The first touches were like memories returning to the skin. His fingers found paths I no longer remembered myself. The heat of the water mingled with the heat of the moment, and the only thing that echoed between us was the sound of our breathing, uneven, ragged, searching for a rhythm. There, in the most intimate silence of my life, I felt it. My body was no longer alone, and neither was I. He turned me slowly, not with force, but with a firmness that was both possessive and protective. And in that simple gesture, something in me came undone. Intention. He knew exactly what he was doing, and he did it as if he had been waiting for this far longer than I had. His fingers began to trace my skin, starting at my shoulder, descending down my back, outlining the curve of my waist as if mapping a forbidden territory. It was as if he were reading me with his hands, page by page, without skipping a single line. I was trembling, but it wasn't fear. It was something deeper, as if my body was being touched for the very first time. Not for lack of experience, but because no one had ever done it with such complete presence, without rush, without ego, only want. Each of his touches felt like a word my husband had never said to me. Words without sound, but they said everything. I took a deep breath, trying to control a heart that felt out of sync. But it was useless. My body was no longer under the command of logic. It was reacting on its own, as if it had recognized something it had lost long ago. And there, between the warmth of the water and his firm touch, I realized this wasn't just desire. It was a memory of who I was before I faded away. And as wrong as it felt, a part of me wanted it to last all night. It was as if my body remembered something my mind had erased, as if in that moment every cell was screaming, "Asterisk, this is it, asterisk." It wasn't just about his touch. It was about what his touch activated in me, about the woman I once was, the one I had allowed to fall asleep between children and bills, between exhaustion and silence. He held me with the urgency of someone who knows that time is a traitor, that this could end at any second. But there was also care, a kind of silent respect, as if he understood this wasn't just a physical encounter. It was a reclamation. I let him pull me close, let him fit me against him, as if he knew exactly where I ached. I let him show me, without words, that I could still make someone's skin tingle, and my own. The water kept falling, muffling the sounds, but it couldn't muffle what was happening between us. Labored breaths, hands exploring forgotten paths, skin against skin, not in desperation, but raw and intimate. No masks, no script. I closed my eyes and let my head rest on his shoulder, and in that simple gesture I understood. I wasn't surrendering to him. I was rescuing myself from me. And even knowing it was forbidden, what I felt was something far more dangerous. Freedom. The wall was cold, icy even. But when he pressed me against it, what shot through my spine wasn't the thermal shock. It was the contrast, the heat of the moment, the muffled sound of steam all around us, and that sudden contact that seemed to scream everything we were trying to hide. My mouth fell open on reflex, as if my body wanted to cry out. But no sound escaped, only a sharp, trapped gasp. I bit my lip so hard I could taste the metallic tang of blood, a reminder that we were still here, that this was real. Two bodies, two forgotten wedding rings, two parallel worlds colliding in a space where right and wrong had ceased to exist. I should have been thinking about the consequences, but everything in me was begging for more. He looked at me for a second, a look heavy with both desire and guilt. And in that brief moment, I understood everything. He was trying to hold back his own scream, too, his own abyss. The sound of water hitting the tile was the only soundtrack, but what passed between us was louder than any music. Was it dirty? Maybe. Wrong? Absolutely. But in that moment, I didn't want redemption. I didn't want forgiveness or logic. I just wanted one more second with him like this, one more second inside this mistake. Because it was here, strangely, that I felt the most alive. When it was over, it was truly over. No promises, no cliches, not even a "stay a little longer." Just the sound of a towel being pulled from the rack and the steam dissipating into the air, as if it too wanted to escape what we had done. I wrapped myself up slowly, trying not to think, but my body was still humming. Every inch of my skin seemed to carry the memory of his touch. I sat on the edge of the bed, not knowing if I wanted him to speak or to remain silent. He pulled on his shirt quietly. No rush, but no hesitation either. He gave me one last look. Long, steady, almost tender. And in that gaze was everything that no words could ever say. There was no goodbye kiss. No, see you later. Not even an "this was a mistake." Just the click of the door closing behind him, and a room that suddenly felt enormous. But even there, alone, I couldn't pretend that nothing had happened, because everything had happened. Something inside of me had broken. Or maybe it had been set free. I had spent years not feeling desired, not feeling whole, and now a few minutes with him had dismantled everything I thought I knew about myself. I tried not to cry, not from sadness, but from fear. Fear of having felt all of that for someone who wasn't mine. And worse, the fear of wanting to feel it again. It took me a few minutes to get up from the bed. The towel no longer hid anything, not from my body, not from my soul. I went to the mirror as if facing a final test. And what I saw there wasn't exactly new, but it was no longer what I recognized. There was a strange gleam in my eyes. It wasn't just the reflection of the artificial light. It was something deeper, almost unsettling, a mixture of guilt, pleasure, and freedom, all tangled up together. I touched my lips, still trembling. The memory of the kiss we never had, of the sound we never made, of the words we swallowed. It was all still there, held somewhere between skin and memory. And then I realized the most frightening thing. I felt no regret. Not in the way I was supposed to. Not in the way a married woman should feel after what she had done. There was a weight, to be sure, but it wasn't guilt, not in the traditional sense. It was the awareness of a line crossed, yes, but it was also the certainty that it had awakened me. For the first time in years, I felt something beyond exhaustion and duty, and that was what disturbed me most. How good it felt, how right it felt in the midst of all that was wrong. In that mirror, through the steam and wrapped in a towel, I saw a woman who existed before the marriage, before the routine, before the slow erasure. And she was back, dangerous, alive, and desperately thirsty. That night, I lay in bed alone. The room was dark, the sheets still warm, but the space beside me was empty. And yet a presence lingered, invisible, yet clinging to me like a scent that refuses to fade. My body still held it all, the touch, the heat, the muffled sound of the shower running between our pauses, the shock of cold tile against my back, the firmness of his hands, guiding my insecurities to a place I'd always feared to revisit, the sweet taste of a sin that made me feel alive again. I closed my eyes and felt it all, as if reliving a moment that had just passed. It was so recent, yet it felt eternal. And though my mind screamed that this should never have happened, my body whispered a different truth. It had known all along. Before I did. Before the messages. Before the door even opened. My body recognized in him something I had long forgotten in myself. The will to be alive again. I sighed, lying there, not daring to think of tomorrow, of my husband's eyes, of the routine that awaited me, of the price a moment like this always demands. But in that silent, dark instant, I smiled, a small, almost childlike smile, because despite everything, I was there, whole, not regretful, not lost, simply awake.